I also think that it's how people they look down on you if you don't want kids. I think that's so wrong. You should send like gifts to people who couples who choose not to have kids instead. Hello guys, hello YouTubers. I was presented with a question on my one of the videos. Someone asked me, Frank, when you gonna have children with Vivian? And my response was that I didn't want to have children because I thought it was a more responsibility to not bring a sentient life into existence. And then I went on and made a little, pretty long post on Facebook, and I got a lot of responses and a lot of Jimmys are rustled. So I'm just gonna go ahead and sort of just spill out what I had in mind and the reasons why I don't want to have children. I'm not gonna impose it on you because everyone can make their own rational decisions. Basically, I said I didn't want to have children because I listed about 6 or 7 reasons why most people have children for the wrong reason. And first reason was religion, because I read the Bible, but God says blah blah blah, and I have to have children to fulfill the blah, blah, blah. Okay, that's bullshit. Second of all, people have children because they're in a point of their lives where they think it's time to have children. So I'm 30, it's time to have children. Everyone else, all my friends are 30, they have children. I gotta have children, right? And the third reason is children are cute. Okay, fourth reason, people have children because they want to invest. Even though they don't say it out loud, people invest in children, invest their resources in children because they hope that someday they're going to return the favor and take care of them when they're older. And five, people have children because they're too scared to have abortions. They're scared that they're gonna kill a life. They're gonna, they're pro-abortion, so they even though the conditions that they're gonna have children under are very bad, even they're gonna cause more suffering than they, than if they just get rid of the fetus that probably doesn't even feel pain. Anyway, and then another reason is that parents are like forcing the kids to have children. The family dinner, and then the your parents are like, oh, you're 35, please, I want my grandkid. And another reason, my personal reason, that's the reason I happen to my family is that my brother was born because my parents felt like I was bored. Okay, that was another reason. You have children because you want to fulfill somebody else's hole. Even your own, your siblings. Anyway, so I think all those reasons are, if you really think about them, all those reasons are not really the right reasons to have children, and some reasons are pretty selfish. And I don't think people really think twice about the consequences that come with having children. A lot of people there are a lot of people who create children and then they think a lot about it, but you don't really know. That's my point. You don't really know what's gonna happen to this life, even if you think about it 1,000 times more than what you should have, or what most people do. You still don't really know what's going to happen in this life. So here are some of my points I listed for why I think it's in a way selfish and in a way immoral to have kids. Because one, you're bringing life into this world. You're bringing something into existence, and that in a way is you kind of imposing in life. Like nobody ever asked to be born, right? I didn't ask to be born, and she didn't ask to be born. You didn't ask to be born, right? And you just sort of forced. You were forced by your parents. Your mom threw you out of her vagina, and basically you were stuck with this life, and you have to live it no matter what, And I think that is in a way kind of like a violent gesture. And second of all, you're, like I said before, you're gambling with a well-being of a sentient being. Like you're gambling with a life, basically. Like I said, a lot of people, nobody who has children have children because they think that the children can be fucked up. Like no one goes into marriage expecting a divorce. You know what I'm saying? It's the same thing, but a lot of people do end up in divorces. A lot of kids do come out fucked up and shit, right? So there's no guarantee that this person that you created isn't gonna come out disfigured or be retarded or catch diseases and become terminally ill or just be fucked up in the head. Maybe he just had this wiring that's like mine. He comes out and he's like, oh man, what am I doing here? He finds this existence very absurd, and he didn't want to be here, and he goes into a depression. He doesn't want to be alive, and blah 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 blah. And Yeah, exactly. You don't know what's gonna happen to this life. You assume the greatest for your offspring, of course. That's always a good intention. But once you threw that life out of you, like, you really have no control over it. You know, you do have a little bit of control over it, but you can't really have all the says over the well-being of the individual. Even if the okay, I'll get to that later. Anyway, number three, if you never give life, you'll never die. Basically, parents are responsible for the death of the children in a way. Like, I know it sounds absurd, but like, if you don't throw a life into this world, it won't wither, and it won't get old, and it won't die. All those are sufferings, and that could be avoided if you just decide not to have children. And more on suffering. Existence always entails some kind of pain and suffering, right? It's like a default in a way of existence is the suffering and the pain. Now, for most organisms on this planet, it's mostly suffering. That there's the balance between pleasure and pain is always like, it's not very balanced. And for most of the lives on this planet, the rats, the kangaroos, the tigers, they're just running around and hiding and hunting and getting food and fucking and jizzing on each other and dying and getting sick. That's all there is to life. 99% of the life on this planet have more suffering than pleasure, right? And people are gonna be like, oh, without pain there won't be suffering. Okay, that bullshit is played out because, from my personal perspective, and a lot of people agree that even if pleasure is attained, even if you do get a little bit of pleasure, okay, let's live for the little pleasures of life. I live for the little happiness of life, and I'm willing to go through some suffering to attain those pleasures. That's great, but like, if you think about it, happiness and pleasure isn't something that you gained or you attained. It's just a temporarily a wearing off of suffering. For example, think of how hard you have to work just to gain that a tiny bit of pleasure. Like, you have to work really, really hard to be happy. But suffering and sadness, like, think about all the human emotions you have. You have like, 5 or 6 basic human emotions. Only one of them is positive. And basically what that tells you is that there's more suffering in life than pleasure. And if you just let go, you're suffering. You know what I'm saying? You have to work really hard to acquire food. And once you eat food, you feel a little bit of happiness. But that happiness isn't a surplus. It's not like a plus. It's not something you gain. It's just the temporary season of suffering. But then you go hungry again, you want to get some more food. When you're hungry, when you fill your stomach out with food, that is the removal of suffering, not the gaining of whatever. It's not something new. If you just stop, if you just lay in your bed and just let go, you're gonna feel pain. You're gonna be thirsty in 2 hours, you're gonna be hungry in 5 hours, in 2 days you're gonna die if you don't drink water. You just let go. And same thing with how people say it takes like 1 second to destroy something and like 10 years to build something. It's the same thing. It takes a lot to build happiness, and it's the suffering that come with it. Is it worth it? Okay, that's for you to think about. Okay, and people are gonna be like, okay, my life is wonderful. Hey, Frank, look at you, Frank. You're not suffering, right? You live in a house and blah blah, blah and stuff like that, right? You have food and you have people that follow you around the internet. You should be happy. Why are you so depressed? Okay, I'm not very depressed. I'm an overall very happy human being. And my point is that even for a few lucky individuals who attain so much success and pleasures and happiness in life. Maybe the first born of a very, very wealthy king that he just lives in a glass house and he has prostitutes and food and he doesn't have to worry about anything. Would life be justifiable to give to that person? Well, maybe more justifiable than, say, 90% of the people on the planet. Because let's face it, most people on this planet aren't that lucky, right? And even if you are Bill Gates and you know that your son is gonna don't have to worry about anything and can live a life of a this for his entire life. There's no guarantee, like I said, that he isn't gonna get sick. He isn't gonna bump his head against the wall. He's gonna lose his limb someday, and that is definitely not gonna guarantee that he's not gonna get old and die. Another word about pleasure is that even for this person, even for the person who experiences so much pleasure in life that he thinks that he attains some kind of a goal. Maybe this next Bill Gates became Bill Gates times 10, right? All those goals, like if you reduce it down a little bit, it's just like fruitless. It's just meaningless. Like basically anything that gets accomplished, any goals that we set in life are just in a universal grand scheme of things is pretty meaningless, right? So in other words, happiness is just an illusion. It's a mechanism created by the brain to make you think that you're accomplishing something, to make you think that you feel good when you do certain things, but at the end, it's just still the same DNA molecule replicating itself, doing everything it can to make sure that it makes copies of itself to pass on to the next generation. It's no different than what rats are doing when it sees the cheese. Except our cheese is just more elaborated. Our cheese is becoming the next Bill Gates. Our cheese is making $1 million playing basketball, right? Getting famous, whatever. It doesn't make a difference. It's still the same cheese, the same mechanism. And you don't have to remind yourself that every day. I mean, even for people who know this fact, they still do feel happiness. There's a difference between knowing the underlying logic objectively and experiencing subjectively, phenomenologically, and it's up to the individual to whether or not they want to realize, they want to make this distinction. But that I'm not saying that happiness isn't real. I'm just saying that all those happiness are just brain mechanisms designed by millions of years of evolution to make you want to seek after those little or big things that make you happy, so that the genes can pass themselves on. But then at the end of the day, for what? For what? All the DNA molecules need to do to make sure that they pass themselves on is to take care of the mechanism of seeking pleasure and avoiding pain, because basically everything that's pleasurable are good for the self-preservation of species, and are good for this DNA molecule that's inside you passing itself on to the next person. So in short, we're pre-programmed to be pawns in the DNA game, and but we're better than cockroaches. We can put a stop to this. We can rationally think our way out of this system. I mean, like, we don't really need more human beings on this planet, you know? Like, seriously, why do we need more people on this planet? Seriously, I would rather advocate the procreation of pandas than human beings. If you get pregnant, abortion is always a pro. I think people should have abortions all over the place, provided the fact that the fetus doesn't feel any pain. Okay, that is the key, right? The fetus or doesn't feel any pain, or even the mother doesn't feel any pain, because pain, like I said, is the pain and pleasure is the only thing that you can really measure the value of an organism with. You know, not intelligence, but feeling. Pain and pleasure. That's how you weight the value of an organism. Anyway, so I think there should be more abortion clinic on this planet than 7-Eleven. I think it should be one right there. So when you get pregnant, you just go there and cut your babies off before you become a suffering being. Here's our things that you should consider. Number one, you should take full responsibility to let them suffer as little as they can. If you want to bring a life on this planet, you better make sure that you can support him all your life. Like, all your life. You can, if you really want to have kids, make sure that he lives the best life possible. And like I said, most people, this is not going to be the case, because very few people can support their kid's life. Number two, you should always assist your child in committing suicide if he asks. Because, like I said, it's an innate mechanism to self-preserve. So suicide is the hardest thing to do. So, like, it's really hard. So people, don't give me that, oh, Frank, just kill yourself crap. People who are like, just kill yourself. You just can't. You know, we're programmed to not kill ourselves, but it's a lot easier if someone else helps you do it. If there's a law that says that you can end your life in a pleasant way, then I'm all for that. You know what I'm saying? So, like, if you have a kid and if he asks you to end his life for him, or if you should respect his opinion and decision right away. Anybody on this planet who tells their parents that he's gonna kill himself, 99% of the time, the parents are gonna be like, no way, please, don't kill yourself. We're gonna get you. We're gonna save you. You know, you gotta live. You know, life is so precious. Now, who the fuck are those parents to tell their kids like to live? Like, who the fuck are they? It's just so fucked up how we're thrown out of this world. That we didn't choose this life. We're stuck here, and then we can't even leave. We can't even kill ourselves. How fucked up is that? So anyway, so if you're the parents, even I know this is, you should always, you know, encourage or even aid your sons or daughters into any of the lives if that is what they choose to do. so selfish when parents just like, oh no, you got. Are they doing it for their kids or for themselves? Right? Are they doing it? They're doing it for themselves. They're gonna suffer when their kids die, so they don't want to suffer. So they would rather have their kids suffer more because, like I said, non-existence doesn't have any suffering. It doesn't have any pleasure. It's zero. So it's always better than existence because the existence always entails suffering. And if you're a person who is considering suicide, your existence must be already full of suffering. So end it. Anyways. So that's probably it. And the final point is that I just don't like babies. I think they're also overrated and they're so fucking ugly. So like, you know, you don't need any more. Let's face it. You think your baby is special. It's gonna amount to nothing. It's gonna be another individual who is mediocre. It's gonna give more lives to it. More mediocre individuals that at the end of the day accomplishes nothing. Anyway, so last point I want to make is that we have this thing called the rational brain, and this allows us to make rational decisions that animals can't. So the only thing that separates us from animals is the fact that, one, we have the intelligence to choose rationally not to have children, not to impose lives on the next person, and two, we can choose to end our own lives. So if we just take care of those things, I'm sure that the planet will be so much happier, and it doesn't really matter anyway. Who cares if the planet is happy? The universe doesn't give a shit about the Earth. So, I mean, just the very fact that a lot of people are angry about this issue speaks for itself. That proves that genetically we're programmed to all think that having babies is a good thing. Even our culture is built upon this genetic tendency to want to love babies, to think it's an accomplishment, that it's a pleasure to want to have babies and to raise babies, to watch them grow up. And my point is that we don't want to be stuck in that. We can go beyond that and say and think to ourselves, do we really need to bring more sentient beings into this earth? For what? You know, my point is that we don't need more of those DNA molecules replicating itself. We don't need it anymore, especially not human beings who are gonna just step over all other organisms. If you never heard of those ideas, it might be new, but like those ideas aren't really new. Just like people don't really talk about those ideas because they get flamed and people get pissed off and people get offended. But those ideas have been around since the age of, I don't know, Schopenhauer, Nietzsche. I don't know. I know there are books written about this. So like, I mean, if you're not familiar with evolutionary psychology, or if you're religious, or if you have never read existentialism, then I think this might be new to you. Half of the comment are like, it's too long to read. But I can tell it's bullshit. Like, just fuck that shit. You know, if you're not gonna read my article and you're not gonna listen to the whole video, don't even bother replying. Alright, thanks.